Have you ever felt like you were just one coin away from losing it all? Emma Miller thought as she stood at the counter of the small convenience store, her fingers trembling while she counted the last of her change. It wasn't enough. She knew it wasn't enough, but she couldn't afford to leave without the formula. Not when Lily, her 6-month-old daughter, was depending on it. Her stomach churned with the familiar knot of worry, the tight grip of financial strain squeezing harder than ever before. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across her exhausted face. The weight of the world seemed to press down on her shoulders as she shuffled the coins again, hoping for some miracle, but it was no use. The cashier, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile, seemed to sense Emma's distress. "It's okay, sweetheart. You can get it next time," she said gently, but Emma felt the sting of pride. She wasn't used to asking for help, especially not when it felt like she was always taking from others just to get by. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "I've got it," came a deep, calm voice from behind her. Emma froze, turning around to face the man who had spoken. Standing there was a tall man, dressed in an expensive navy suit, his face a picture of concern. His steel gray eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, Emma thought she saw a flicker of something. Maybe empathy, maybe curiosity. He was clearly out of place in this shabby store, but he seemed to care about her predicament. "I can cover the rest," he said, his voice warm but firm, handing a few bills to the cashier. Emma blinked in surprise. "No, you don't have to," she started to protest, but the man waved it off. "Please," he insisted, his gaze never leaving hers. "Let me." Her heart skipped a beat. She was used to struggling, used to making do with what little she had, but she had never been on the receiving end of such kindness from a complete stranger. She could feel the heat rise in her cheeks, her mind racing to understand why he was doing this. As the cashier rang up the purchase, she handed Emma her change. But before she could leave, the man placed a business card in her hand. "I'm Jason Pierce," he said simply, offering her a small, knowing smile. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out." Emma's fingers brushed against the card, and she looked up to find him already walking toward the door, the sound of the bell jingling as it closed behind him. She stood there for a moment, the weight of the card in her hand feeling heavy with meaning. She wasn't sure why a man like him would care about someone like her. But as she turned to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was more than just a random act of kindness. It felt like the beginning of something that could change her life forever. Emma didn't know why she kept the card. It wasn't like she could just call up a billionaire and ask for help, right? Still, she found herself taking it out of her purse over the next few days, staring at Jason Pierce's name, wondering what kind of man would offer help so easily. It wasn't as though she'd ever had someone like him in her life. She wasn't used to the kind of help that came without strings attached, without judgment. As she balanced work and caring for Lily, she could almost forget about the moment at the store, but it lingered, unshakable. One evening, after a long shift at the diner, Emma collapsed onto her couch, Lily asleep in her arms, the baby's tiny breaths a soothing rhythm in the silence. The card was still in her purse, but tonight, she didn't think about it. She focused on the small victories, getting through the day, paying for what she could, and managing to feed herself and Lily. She had become a master at making do, but there was always that edge of worry, always that fear that something would break. Then, a week later, the unexpected happened. Emma was halfway through her shift when her phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unfamiliar number. "Hi, Emma. It's Jason Pierce. I hope this message finds you well. I've been thinking about you and wanted to check in. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. I mean it." For a second, Emma stared at the screen, disbelief mixing with confusion. Why would Jason Pierce, the CEO, reach out to her? He didn't know her anything. She had never even asked for help. Her heart raced. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers, let alone from someone like him. But the more she looked at the message, the more something in her felt like she couldn't ignore it. So, she hesitated for a moment, then typed a simple reply. "Thank you for checking in. I'm doing all right. Just a bit of a rough time with everything. But I'm managing." The phone buzzed again almost instantly. "I'm glad to hear that. Still, if there's anything at all you need, I'm here." Emma felt a warmth spread through her, but also an anxiety. She hadn't expected this. Was it just pity? She wasn't sure. She set the phone down, her mind racing. Jason didn't know her, didn't know how hard she fought every day. He didn't know the loneliness that came with trying to do it all on her own. And yet, there he was, offering something that felt so simple, yet so rare, someone who cared. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the kindness, the sincerity. She didn't know what to do with that. She was used to taking care of herself, but there was something in his words that made her wonder if it was okay to accept help. That night, she couldn't sleep, tossing and turning as she thought about Jason's message. Was she being foolish? Could she trust him? What if he was just being nice and nothing more? But no matter how much she turned it over in her mind, she kept coming back to the same thought. What would it be like to have someone who actually cared, someone who wasn't afraid to step in when things got hard? She wanted to believe it was possible. She wanted to believe that kindness, real kindness, still existed. So, the next morning, after dropping Lily off at daycare, Emma did something she never thought she would. She picked up the phone and called the number Jason had left for her. She didn't know what she was expecting. Maybe just a friendly conversation, maybe nothing at all. But when Jason answered, his voice was calm and reassuring, just like it had been that day in the store. "Emma, it's good to hear from you," he said, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. And for the first time in a long time, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of something different. Emma sat at the small table in her kitchen, the morning sun filtering through the curtains, casting a soft glow over the room. Her mind kept drifting back to the conversation she'd had with Jason the day before. It had been brief, but there was something in his voice that had made her feel heard, seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. She couldn't help but wonder if she was imagining things. Maybe she was just desperate for someone to listen. But no, she knew that wasn't it. Jason had offered her something more than just words. He had offered understanding. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt that. The feeling lingered, like a warm blanket wrapping around her. She spent the rest of the day with a different sense of purpose, her usual anxiety replaced with a strange hope. The next few days passed in a blur of work, errands, and the constant hum of trying to make ends meet. But in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the thought of Jason. What was he really like? Was he just being kind because he felt sorry for her? Or did he genuinely want to help? She didn't know the answers to these questions, but something told her she had to find out. So, one afternoon, she did something that felt completely out of character. She called him again. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. "Hey, Emma." His voice was calm, like it always was. "How are you?" She hesitated, unsure of what to say. "I'm good, I guess," she finally said, her voice soft. "I've just been thinking a lot about everything. And about you. I don't want to impose, but you've really helped me." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Emma's heart began to race. Was she saying too much? Was she being too forward? But then Jason spoke again, his voice steady. "Emma, you're not imposing. I meant what I said. If you need help, I'm here. You don't have to do this alone." His words hit her like a wave, washing away all the doubt and hesitation she had been holding on to. She closed her eyes, letting out a deep breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Thank you," she whispered, the words feeling heavier than they should have. "Thank you for not giving up on me." She could feel her walls beginning to crumble, bit by bit. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for her after all. The next time she saw him was a few days later. She had just finished her shift at the diner when she received a message from Jason. "I'd like to take you out for dinner. No strings, just 2 people having a meal. Would you be interested?" The invitation felt like a lifeline. Emma hadn't had a proper night out in ages. She had forgotten what it felt like to sit down, relax, and not worry about the next bill or the next problem. And though it seemed crazy, she found herself saying yes. The night of the dinner, she arrived at the restaurant, her nerves on edge. She had dressed carefully, but nothing could calm the butterflies in her stomach. When she walked in, Jason was already seated at a table by the window, his presence commanding, but his smile warm. "You look beautiful, Emma," he said as she sat down. His words caught her off guard. She wasn't used to compliments, at least, not like this. She wasn't used to being seen as anything more than the struggling single mom. But in that moment, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't in a long time. Worthy. They talked over dinner, sharing stories about their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. Emma was surprised by how easy it was to talk to him, how comfortable she felt, even in such an unfamiliar situation. As the night wore on, Emma realized that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. Maybe Jason wasn't just offering help out of pity. Maybe he saw something in her that she hadn't seen in herself. When they said goodbye that night, Jason placed his hand gently on hers. "You're doing great, Emma. I can see it. And I'm here if you need anything." For the first time in a long time, Emma believed him. The days that followed the dinner with Jason were a blur of uncertainty and quiet hope. Emma's life, once a constant struggle to stay afloat, seemed to carry a different rhythm now. She still had her daily challenges, work, bills, and being a single mom, but something had shifted. Jason's kindness, his offer to help without expecting anything in return, stayed with her. She found herself thinking about him more often, not as a billionaire CEO, but as someone who had given her something she hadn't realized she needed, a sense of worth. That Friday afternoon, as Emma was sorting through some old bills at the kitchen table, her phone buzzed with a message. It was Jason. "I'm going to be in town this weekend for a meeting. I'd love to see you again. Let me know if you're free." Her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just a dinner invitation anymore. It felt different. The tension in her chest tightened as she considered her options. Was it too soon? Could she really see him again, without feeling like she was stepping into a world she didn't belong to? But before she could overthink it, she found herself typing back. "I'd like that. I'm free Saturday evening." The message went through, and before she knew it, they had set a time to meet. On Saturday, Emma found herself standing in front of her bathroom mirror, trying to make herself look presentable. She had nothing fancy to wear, just an old dress she'd bought for her sister's wedding a few years ago, but it still fit. It wasn't much, but it was the best she could do. As she looked at her reflection, she felt a sense of unease. Who was she kidding? Jason was used to women who could afford designer clothes, private jets, and five-star dinners. And here she was, just a mom trying to make a life for her daughter. But then she remembered something Jason had said during their last conversation. "You're doing great, Emma. And you deserve to be happy." The words gave her the courage to go. When she arrived at the restaurant, Jason was already there, waiting. As always, he looked effortlessly put together, his suit sharp and his smile warm. "You look beautiful," he said as she approached, and for a moment, Emma felt like she was more than just the girl struggling to get by. She felt seen. They spent the evening talking about life, their hopes, their pasts. It wasn't awkward, it wasn't forced. It felt like two people just enjoying each other's company, something Emma hadn't done in so long. As they finished their meal, Jason looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "I know we've only just met, but I feel like there's something between us, Emma. Something worth exploring." Emma's heart fluttered in her chest. She wasn't sure what he meant, but for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for something more. She hadn't let herself hope for much in recent years, but with Jason, it felt like the possibilities were endless. She smiled softly. "I think so too, Jason." As they left the restaurant, walking side by side into the cool night, Emma couldn't help but feel that this was the beginning of something new, something that had the potential to change everything. The weeks that followed felt like a slow, steady shift in Emma's life. Jason's presence had become a quiet but constant comfort. She saw him more often, each meeting easing the weight that had pressed on her for so long. There was something incredibly simple and real about their time together, something Emma had never imagined she could have. He didn't treat her like a charity case, didn't ask her to be someone she wasn't. He accepted her for who she was, the mother who worked tirelessly to take care of her daughter, who managed to smile even when life felt like it was coming apart at the seams. One afternoon, Jason invited her to his office for coffee. Emma was nervous. She had never been to his office, and the idea of stepping into a world so different from her own made her heart race. She arrived, trying to shake off the feeling of being out of place. When she walked through the sleek glass doors of the building, she felt a bit overwhelmed by the size and grandeur of it all. But Jason greeted her with his usual warmth, making her feel like she was the most important person in the room. "You're here," he smiled, standing up from behind his desk. "I hope I didn't keep you waiting." Emma smiled back, grateful for the way he always seemed to put her at ease. "Not at all," she replied, her nerves slowly calming. As they sat down and talked, Emma found herself opening up more than she had before. She told him about Lily, about the challenges she faced, and the dreams she had for her future. Jason listened, really listened, as if her words mattered. He didn't rush her or interrupt. He simply let her speak, allowing her to release the weight she had been carrying alone for so long. "You're doing an incredible job, Emma," he said, his voice sincere. "I don't think you realize just how strong you are." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. No one had ever looked at her that way, like she was more than just a single mom struggling to make ends meet. It was as though Jason saw the strength beneath the surface, the strength that she had always known was there, but had never been acknowledged. Later that evening, after their coffee meeting, Jason walked her to her car. As they stood in front of it, he looked at her with a tenderness that made Emma's heart flutter. "I'm glad you came today," he said softly. "I like spending time with you, Emma. You make me feel like I'm actually living, not just existing." His words took her by surprise. She had never imagined that someone like Jason, someone with so much power and influence, would feel this way. She had always thought people like him were too busy for anything real, but here he was, standing in front of her, sharing something deeply personal. "I feel the same way," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I'm glad I met you." They stood there for a moment, the quiet between them speaking louder than any words could. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she wasn't alone in the world. Maybe she never had been. Maybe Jason had always been there, waiting for her to see the possibility of something more. As she drove home that night, she couldn't help but smile. Things weren't perfect. Life was still hard, and there were days when she didn't know how she was going to make it. But now, she had someone who believed in her, someone who saw her for who she truly was. And that made all the difference. Emma was starting to feel like she was living in a dream. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions, from her first dinner with Jason to the way he continued to show up for her in ways she had never imagined. Every time they met, every conversation, made her realize just how much her life was shifting. She couldn't ignore it any longer. The way she felt when she was with him, the way he made her feel seen and valued. It was more than just the relief of not being alone. It was a connection she hadn't thought possible. Still, doubts crept into her mind. Was it too fast? Was she ready for this? Jason's world was so far removed from hers, it almost felt like they were living in different realities. But then she'd think about the way he treated her, the way he respected her struggles, and the way he never judged her. Maybe it didn't matter where they came from or what they had. What mattered was how they made each other feel. She had just finished another late shift at the diner when Jason called her. "Hey, Emma, I was thinking about you," he said, his voice always steady and warm. "I have a free afternoon this weekend. Would you like to come with me to visit a place I've been meaning to show you?" Emma's heart skipped a beat. Jason was always doing things for her, but this felt different. He wanted to share something personal, a part of his world. "I'd love that," she replied, her voice a little breathless. Saturday afternoon arrived, and Emma dressed in something simple, though she still felt a bit out of place when she got into Jason's car. But Jason smiled at her as she sat down, his reassuring gaze putting her at ease. "You'll like this place," he said, the excitement in his voice unmistakable. They drove out of the city, and Emma couldn't help but notice how beautiful the countryside looked in the daylight. As they neared a small vineyard, Jason pulled into the gravel driveway. It was a peaceful place, far removed from the bustle of the world they both knew. He led her through the rows of vines, the air filled with the scent of earth and fresh plants. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting soft shadows on the ground. "I come here when I need to think," Jason explained, his tone quieter now. "It's a place where everything slows down. Just nature and me." Emma took a deep breath, feeling the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. "It's beautiful," she said, looking around in awe. She had never been to a place like this, and it felt like she was experiencing something rare. Jason turned to her, his expression serious. "I wanted to share this with you, Emma. You've been so strong for so long. I just wanted to show you that you don't have to carry everything alone." His words hit her deeply. She had spent so much of her life alone, so much of it spent shouldering burdens that no one knew about. To hear him acknowledge that, to hear him offer her something like this, it was like a weight lifting off her chest. They spent the afternoon talking, walking through the vineyard, sharing pieces of their lives in ways that felt natural. By the time the sun began to set, Emma realized she had never felt more at peace. As they sat on the porch of the small house at the vineyard, watching the sky turn orange and pink, Jason looked at her. "I'm glad you came, Emma," he said softly. "You deserve to have moments like this. To just breathe." She smiled at him, feeling something stir deep inside her. For the first time in a long time, She allowed herself to truly feel. She wasn't alone anymore, and maybe that was all she needed to start believing in the possibility of something more. Emma woke up the next morning with a feeling she couldn't shake. The memory of yesterday's visit to the vineyard, the way the sun had set, the peaceful silence they had shared, it lingered in her mind like a song she couldn't stop humming. Jason had been kind, but there was something more in his words, in the way he had looked at her. Something that made her heart race whenever she thought about it. She had never allowed herself to think that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be happy. Life had always been about survival for her, making it through the day, finding a way to keep going. But now, there was a glimmer of something different. Something that made her question everything she had believed about herself. Over the next few days, Emma found herself distracted. She tried to focus on her work, on Lily, but her mind kept drifting back to Jason. She knew it was dangerous to let herself imagine a life with him, but she couldn't help it. She was falling for him. She had to admit it to herself. And that scared her. What if she wasn't enough for him? What if, when he saw who she really was, someone struggling to make ends meet, someone with baggage he couldn't possibly understand, he would walk away? But then, one evening, Jason called. "Hey, Emma," he said, his voice as steady and warm as always. "I was thinking about you. How about dinner tomorrow night? Just the two of us." Her heart skipped a beat. She had been hoping for this. She wanted to see him again, but now there was a new tension between them. She didn't want to ruin what they had, but she also couldn't deny what she felt. "I'd like that," she replied, her voice steady despite the way her heart was racing. "I'll pick you up at 7, Jason said. "We're something nice." She couldn't help but smile. It wasn't the first time he had taken her out, but this felt different. This felt like it could be the night when everything changed. The next evening, Emma stood in front of her mirror, trying to make herself look good enough. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She hadn't had many dates, let alone dinners with a man like Jason. But she wanted to look good, not for him, but for herself. She deserved to feel beautiful, to feel worthy of this moment. When Jason picked her up, she felt the flutter of excitement that she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. He looked at her with appreciation in his eyes, and for a moment, Emma felt like she was the only woman in the world. They went to a quiet restaurant, the kind of place where the atmosphere was intimate and the conversation could flow easily. As they sat down, Jason smiled at her. "You look incredible," he said, his voice full of admiration. Emma blushed, but it felt different this time. It wasn't just about the compliments. It was about the way he made her feel. She felt like she mattered. The night passed in a blur of easy conversation and shared laughter. They talked about everything, from their childhoods to their dreams for the future. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she wasn't just a mother or a struggling single woman. She was just Emma, and she was finally letting herself be something more. As the evening ended, Jason walked her to the car. Before she could open the door, he gently took her hand. "I'm really glad we did this," he said softly. "I think there's something special between us, Emma, and I want to see where it goes." Emma's heart swelled at his words. She hadn't realized how much she had needed to hear that, how much she had longed for someone to tell her that she wasn't just a passing moment. She was worth more. "Me too," she whispered. And for the first time, she believed it. The days after the dinner felt different, like a shift had taken place, not just in Emma's world, but in her heart. Jason had been honest, more open than he had been before, and Emma felt a warmth growing between them. There was something special about how easy it was to be with him, how natural it felt. She no longer saw herself as the struggling single mom she had once been. She was becoming someone more, someone worthy of love, and she owed much of that feeling to him. But even as she allowed herself to feel this way, a small part of her held back. What if it was all too good to be true? What if Jason was just being kind, being the man everyone thought he should be, rather than being the man he truly was? It was a fear she couldn't shake, a shadow that followed her even as she walked hand in hand with him through their moments together. Still, she pushed the fear aside for now. She wanted to believe in this, in him. That morning, Jason called, his voice bright with excitement. "Hey, Emma, I have a surprise for you. Do you trust me?" he asked. The question made her smile, though she was curious. "I trust you," she said, unsure of what he had planned. "Good," Jason replied. "Get ready. I'm picking you up at noon." Emma was intrigued, but had no idea what he meant. When Jason arrived, he was grinning from ear to ear. "You'll see," he said, offering his hand to help her into the car. They drove for a while, and Emma found herself enjoying the ride. The windows were down, and the air was warm with the scent of summer. She realized she hadn't felt this relaxed in ages, not since before her life had been consumed by the weight of raising Lily on her own. It felt nice. When they arrived at their destination, Emma blinked in surprise. They were at a small park by a lake. The place was peaceful, surrounded by trees, with the quiet sound of water lapping against the shore. It wasn't grand or luxurious like the places Jason usually frequented, but there was something about it that felt intimate, personal. Jason led her to a quiet spot near the water where a picnic had been set up, a simple blanket, some sandwiches, and a bottle of wine. "I thought we could have a picnic," he said, sitting down beside her. "Just you and me. No fancy restaurants, no distractions, just enjoying the moment." Emma's heart fluttered. This was unexpected, and it was exactly what she needed. They spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and enjoying the beauty of the day. Emma found herself letting go of the doubts she had held on to for so long. In that moment, sitting beside Jason by the water, she realized that she wasn't just living in the moment. She was letting herself dream about the future. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the lake, Jason turned to her with a soft smile. "I'm really glad we did this," he said. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what comes next, and I want you to know that I'm here for you. For both of you." Emma looked at him, her heart full. She hadn't expected this, but here it was, this simple, beautiful moment where she could finally see the possibility of a future she never thought she could have. "I'm glad, too," she whispered, feeling the weight of the words settle into her heart. "I'm really glad." The following weeks brought a new sense of peace to Emma's life, a peace she hadn't realized she could have. Jason continued to be a steady presence, offering not just support, but a glimpse of a future she had never dared to imagine. Their time together was effortless, filled with quiet moments and deep conversations. He listened to her, really listened, as though her dreams and fears mattered as much as his own. It was more than kindness, it was care. For so long, Emma had thought she wasn't deserving of that kind of attention, but Jason made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset by the lake, Emma found herself overwhelmed with emotion. Jason reached over, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle. "You've come so far, Emma," he said softly, his voice filled with warmth. "I know things haven't been easy, but I'm proud of you." Emma's heart fluttered at his words. She had always felt like she was fighting alone, like she was barely keeping her head above water. But here, in this moment, with Jason beside her, it felt different. It felt like she could finally let go of the weight she had been carrying for so long. She took a deep breath, looking into his eyes. "I never thought I could feel this way again," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like I could really have something for myself. But with you, I feel like it's possible." Jason smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. "You deserve every bit of happiness, Emma, and you don't have to do it alone anymore." Those words, "you don't have to do it alone anymore," resonated deep within her. For the first time in years, Emma allowed herself to believe in the possibility of love, of a future that wasn't just about surviving, but living. And it was all thanks to Jason. As the days passed, their connection grew stronger. They continued to spend time together, not just as a couple, but as partners. Jason became a part of Emma's life in a way that felt natural, like they were meant to be there for each other. And Emma, for the first time in a long time, allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't alone, where she didn't have to fight every battle by herself. One day, as they sat in her living room, Jason turned to her with a serious look in his eyes. "Emma," he said, his voice filled with sincerity, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what comes next. And I want you to know that I'm here, for you and for Lily. I'm not going anywhere." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to say those words, but she realized, in that moment, that she had been hoping for them. She had been hoping that he saw her, really saw her, and wanted to be there for her, not just as a fleeting moment, but as a lasting part of her life. "I want that too, Jason," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I want us to be a family." And just like that, in the quiet of her living room, surrounded by the life they had built together, Emma realized that she had finally found what she had always been searching for, not just love, but a home. A place where she could belong. A place where she didn't have to carry the weight alone anymore.